This lesson is for 11.5 on the areas of triangles and trapezoids. And I'm going to start with a parallelogram. So I'm going to ask you a question. How do you find the area of a parallelogram? You should remember, because you have to memorize these formulas for the test, that the area of a parallelogram is base times height. Okay? So if I make the base of this parallelogram 10 centimeters, and I make its height, so wobbly, 6 centimeters, then you would know that the area is 60 centimeters squared. Okay. I'm going to put one more height thing on here because I'm going to show you something. If I divide this parallelogram into two triangles and tell you that to find the area of a triangle, well, if you know the entire parallelogram's area is 60 centimeters, then all you have to do is cut it in half, just like I did here with this diagonal, okay? And so this triangle's area would be 30, and this triangle's area would be 30. That explanation is why the formula for area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height, because you're just cutting in half the area of a parallelogram. Okay? Now, before we go into examples of how to find areas of triangles and trapezoids, I'm going to go over how to find it for a trapezoid. Okay, you should remember from our lesson on polygons that a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with only one set of parallel sides. Okay, I never can draw these arrows correctly. All right, so here's a trapezoid, and you have the measurements that you need, and here is the formula that you need to memorize. Area equals 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times height. Okay, now that's a little scary looking, but that's okay. I think that this formula is the hardest one to memorize. Okay, so we're going to work with it a lot, but the more practice that you have with it, the better. You do have to have it memorized for next Wednesday's test. You cannot have a cheat sheet with the formulas, okay? And you're on the honor system for that. So moms and other co-teachers out there, please make sure they do not have the formulas sitting somewhere to the side. They have to memorize these. Now, there is an explanation as to how we came up with this weird looking formula. It's on page 600, and I've studied it, and I think trying to explain it on a video is going to be too confusing. But if you need to see why, that page 600 might help you a little bit. My recommendation is that you just accept it and memorize it and move on, okay? So once you have this formula memorized, finding the area of a trapezoid is not that difficult. And in this case, all you have to do is plug in what you know. So area equals 1/2, and then I'm going to add the two bases, which are 10 and 5. And you could put 5 and 10, it doesn't matter, times a height of 8. Okay? Now, in some of the examples that we're about to do, you will have to use the distributive property. And I'll remind you when we get there how to do that. In this one, you don't have to. You can just add these together because they're both constants. And so you get 1/2 times 15 times 8. Now I'm going to give you a little trick. This is all multiplication. The commutative property of multiplication says you can multiply in any order that you want. So my recommendation is, in most cases, it will be easier for you to multiply this 1/2, which will always be part of this formula, to the height. And that gives you 4 times 15 equals 60 feet squared. Okay, that's how you find the area of this trapezoid. Okay, I'm going to go back now to page 601 and go over guided practice 1 through 3, which are all triangles. So if you want to try them by yourself, all you have to do is plug in what you know, and you should get an answer. And I don't know if I've told you this. I know I put it in an email to you earlier in the week, but you may use a calculator. You could use it on 11.4, and you may use it today. So I see that we're going to have some decimal answers. You struggled through the first part of this chapter without calculator, so now you may use them. But the compromise that Miss Winfrey and I came up with is you can use a calculator, but you have to memorize these formulas. And here are the 2 that you will need to know for today. Okay? All right, so guided practice 1 tells us they're all triangles, so I'm just going to start plugging in what I know. Area equals 1/2, and number 1 tells us the base is 7 times a height of 13. And so when I plug all of that in to my calculator, or if you want to do the multiplication, you can, but I'm not going to spell it all out here for you because I don't want to waste the time on my video. You should come up with 45.5. Now, I will reiterate something I've said repeatedly. Show your work on the test. Make sure that you write out the numbers that you're typing into your calculator, okay? I also recommend, if you're using the calculator, that you actually type in 0.5 times 7 times 13, okay? Don't try to be putting... The other way you can do it is 7 times 13 divided by 2, because that's what this would be, okay? But my recommendation, since you're allowed to use a calculator, is to do it this way, okay? If you don't show me any kind of work and you put 455, I have to take off all the points, okay? So be wise about that. Number 2 on guided practice, area equals 1/2 or 0.5 times 6.4 times 14, okay? If it were me, I would type 7 times 6.4 into my calculator, and you should get 44.8 inches squared. And then I'm not going to stop and clear the board off, but I will just tell you that the answer to number 3 is 19.35 feet squared. Okay, on the next page, 602, I'm going to skip example 2, and I'm going to go over number 4 and probably number 5 as well, because in these, you have to do a little bit more calculating because you're finding the base and then the height. Or actually the other way around. You're finding the height in number 4, okay? So, as I've said before, plug in what you know. We're working with this formula for area of a triangle. So I'm just going to start writing out the numbers that I know. And this time I am going to put 0.5 just so I remind myself of what to type into the calculator. And, oh, I didn't plug in what I know. They told us the area for number 4. So I'm going to put 61.6 here equals, now I plug in from my formula, 1/2 or 0.5 times a base of 11 times, I don't know the height, so I put the h. Now I have one variable to solve for, so this takes us back to a previous chapter. We're just solving for the variable. We need to get h alone. I can use a calculator if I want to for this. I know that half of 11 is 5.5, and then I have my variable. Where I am going to use my calculator is in the division of 61.6 so I'm typing 61.6 divided by 5.5 equals 11.2 meters is the answer to what the height is in number 4. Okay, not squared, because we're only saying the height of the triangle, not the area. They told us the area. This number right here was squared, meters squared. Okay, that's how you solve for height. If I were you, I would pause and try to do 5 on your own and then come back to see how it's worked out. Okay, number 5. We are told that the area is 108.5, and that equals 1/2 times a base that we don't know times 14. Now, because of commutative property, I'm going to write it out like this because I want my variable to be at the end. Okay. Now I'm going to do the next math mentally. 1/2 of 14 is 7. And so this is what I end up with. So I need to divide 108.5 divided by 7 equals 15.5 feet for B, for the base. Okay, that's how you do number 5. All right, moving on to trapezoids. We have already done example 3 at the bottom of 602, so I'm going to dive right in and go to example 4 where you have to solve for the height. So we are moving to this formula here for area of a trapezoid. I'm going to plug in what I know based on example 4 information. And it tells us that the trapezoid has an area of 66 square meters. What does that equal? 0.5 times the two bases, which are 8 and 4, added together. 14. 8 plus 14 would be 22. And we do not know the height. Okay, so I'm going to do some calculations. 1/2 of 22 is 11. And then I divide both sides by 11 and find out that the height of the trapezoid is 6 meters. That one was not difficult if you can plug in what you know and you know the formula. Okay, I'm going to use my last 2 minutes to go over example 5 on page 603. I might not finish it. It is explained for you on 603. So the next video, I'm going to do guided practice 6 through 8, whether I finish this one or not. You have a pentagon, and they're asking you what the area of the pentagon is. It's a garden, okay? Now, you need to know that this pentagon is made up of a triangle and a trapezoid, okay? And you know how to find the areas of both, and then you will add them together. So let's start with the triangle. The area of this triangle is 1/2 base times height. The base of the triangle is 8 and the height is 3. That's 24. And so we know that the area of the triangle is 12 yards squared. Okay, now move down to the trapezoid. Plug in what you know. 1/2 of the two bases added together, and so that would be 8 and 6 added together is 14, times a height in the trapezoid is 5, okay? I can do mental math to solve this. 1/2 of 14 is 7, times 5 is 35. Then I need to add it to the area of the triangle. And I find out that the area of this garden, this pentagon, is 47, and I need to get my units, yards squared. Okay, again, that is worked out for you on page 603, probably as quickly as I did it. In part 2, we will move on to 6, 7, and 8 if you want to try to solve those on your own before you start the next video.